little bit of practice, mindfulness, and really taking in what these expert recruiters are going to be sharing today, you can land your dream job. Today, we'll be joined by Jason Grisales, a talent acquisition recruiter from Ferring, US. We'll also be joined by Daniela Martins and Margarita Campalo, both talent acquisition specialists based in Ferring, Lisbon. And I, like I said, am Similian Wea from Ferring, US. Our agenda today, we're going to give you an overview of Ferring as a corporate organization. You will also learn how to prepare for your interview and tell your story by bringing your authentic self. You're going to learn the difference between biography interviews and competency-based interviews, as well as really how to ace those behavioral interviews that are really focusing on your soft skills. And don't forget the close and confirming your interest in the organization. We are going to be covering a lot today, so please feel free to leave your questions for the end in our interactive Q&A session. Ferring Pharmaceuticals is a privately owned, research-driven specialty pharmaceutical company. We were started in 1950 in Sweden, so we've been around for over 74 years. Right now, the company is headquartered in Switzerland. We have over 7,000 employees in more than 50 countries, and last year our revenue was 2.2 billion euros. At Ferring, we truly believe in people come first, and that can be seen in our Ferring philosophy. No matter which Ferring location you have the pleasure to visit, you will see the Ferring philosophy up on a wall somewhere in the organization, because this is what we truly live by. And what's really the Ferring philosophy is people come first and doing what's right. Our Ferring philosophy can be found both internally and externally on how we deal with our stakeholders. Putting patients first. Excuse me. I'm going to try to reshare my slides.
Sam, do you want me to share it?
Yeah, can you share it?
Yes.
I don't know why it's not working.
Yeah. I think this is where you work, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we definitely went back a little bit. Okay. We'll talk through the company overview again then. I think we're actually at the Ferring philosophy, if that's okay. We can forward. Okay. So as I was saying before, the Ferring philosophy really comes down to putting people first. People come first at Ferring is really engineered in the DNA of the organization. Basically, it's putting people first and putting patients first. Can we go to the next slide, please? So at Ferring, we believe in using the Ferring philosophy both internally and externally, whether it's with our stakeholders, which would be patients, doctors, physicians, anyone we're working with externally, or our colleagues within. We truly believe in behaving ethically and loyally in order to put patients first and do what is best for patients. As I mentioned before, Ferring is a privately held organization. With that, we definitely focus on the patients first. Next slide, please. So building our pipeline. As mentioned before, Ferring is a research-based organization. We use our research and innovation. Last year, we invested over 16% of our revenues into research and development for patients everywhere. Next slide, please. At Ferring, we are also committed to sustainability, which means that we have really 3 pillars of sustainability. The first is our purpose. We deliver our value in a responsible and ethical way. Second is our people. We meet the needs of patients. We enable our employees to really find their passion and work in the communities around us. For people, we actually do that through our Ferring Philosophy Days, where we encourage all of our employees to take the time to volunteer outside of work hours on what is important to them as well. And we also, with Ferring Philosophy Days, those are actually covered. So it's kind of like not really a vacation day, but it's kind of like a volunteer day that the employee is paid to volunteer. Last but not least, we really focus on sustainability with the planet. We strive to minimize our environmental footprint in order to create a better future. Next slide. Ferring has a global presence in over 100 companies. We operate in 50 companies with 12 manufacturing sites, as well as an R&D presence in 9 countries. As you can see, we are truly a global company. Next slide, please. So when we talk about Ferring, Ferring was really started as a specialty care organization focused on reproductive medicine and maternal health. Over the last 74 years, we've actually branched out into other therapeutic areas. So, from reproductive medicine and maternal health, we are also pioneers in gastroenterology and microbiome. We are in the urology and uro-oncology space, orthopedics, and endocrinology space as well. If you want to take a deeper dive into some of these therapies, we definitely encourage you to visit the Ferring website where you can see some of the innovative work we are doing. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned before, we are leaders in reproductive medicine. Ferring truly believes in a full spectrum of product from contraception to safe birth. We focus on giving people the opportunities to have children and build families through Ferring. Next slide, please. Some of the therapies that we are working on within the reproductive medicine space is Menopur, Recuval, endometrium, Parabol, and Propess. As you can see, all of these therapies start from inception all the way to a safe birth. Next slide, please. Within the gastro space, I'm just going to highlight one or two because obviously we all can read the slides. The main one I would like to focus on is Rebiota. So Rebiota is actually a first-in-class therapy that was approved to prevent reoccurring C. diff in adults. Next slide, please. In our urology and uro-oncology space, we are pioneering cancer research and cancer treatment through Pharmagon as well as Acilidrin that was recently approved last year. So Pharmagon really focuses on prostate cancer, while Acilidrin is focused on bladder cancer. Next slide, please. Then in our orthopedics and endocrinology space, we have Euflexa, which is an injectable in the knee for osteoporosis. And then Zomatican, I'm so sorry, I'm not saying that properly, as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, R&D is really in the DNA of Ferring. As we focus on our different therapeutic area, it is our goal to continue to pioneer and innovate in each of these therapeutic areas. Next slide, please. And as you can see, from start to 2023, Ferring has made leaps and bounds across the board and to the next 74 years. We're going to transfer to Jason, who will be sharing how to prepare for your interviews, as well as bringing your authentic self. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Sam. So again, everybody, my name is Jason Grisales. I'm a talent acquisition consultant along with Sam over in Ferring Pharmaceutical US. So we're actually based out of New Jersey over in the United States. Um, so you all heard about Ferring and now you all are interested in applying and joining our company. So now we get to the point where you need to prepare for your interview with us or for any company, and there are some things that may help you present yourself in a better light. And always being prepared is the best way to go into an interview, making sure that you cover everything that you need. So these are some of the tips that I have for you all that I believe work best, and I believe that everybody should be aware of. But obviously, everybody may have their own approach to preparing themselves for the interview. So, getting ready to ace your job interview with these tips, I think you'll be better off. So, the first thing I would say is definitely do your research on the company and understand the position that you're applying for and the position that you're interviewing for. So, Sam covered a lot of great detail about Ferring as a company. And that is some of the information that you would want to take with you going into the interview. So, it's really important to have a really solid base understanding of both the company and the role you're applying for. The second thing I would do is try to rehearse your answers or rehearse some of the information that you feel like may get presented during the interview. So some common questions, during interviews are, why are you interested in our company? Why did you decide to apply for the position? And maybe if you're still pursuing your education, they may ask, what kind of degree are you pursuing, or what kind of education are you interested in? And so these are some questions that you can probably practice some of your answers for. And that way you make sure that you cover all the topics you want to highlight of your experience in your answers. So you can even have a quick rehearsal or have a practice interview beforehand where you run through your professional, personal experience and any other pertinent information about yourself. And then the third thing I would say is just make sure you get ready for the big day, right? So make sure you get some rest, make sure you have everything prepared, make sure you have all the information about the company and the position that you need. Um, I'm the type of person that on time for me is being 5 or 10 minutes early. So, if your interview is scheduled for 10 a.m., it doesn't hurt to be there, 9:45, 9:50. If it's a virtual interview, similar to this webinar here that we're having, make sure that your camera equipment, your microphone, kind of test out all the equipment beforehand. If you can be early to your scheduled interview time, dress appropriately. Even if it's a virtual interview as well, you still want to make sure that you look presentable. Again, test out any of the equipment that you need to beforehand. It's always helpful to have notes. I tell people, especially if it's a virtual interview, nobody is going to be able to see your notes way down here. So always have your notes ready, always have any information you need. If you are interviewing in person, make sure you have copies of your resume or any other information. And then not only does this help you prepare, and it probably gives you a better sense of mind and comfort, knowing that you're ready for your interview, but it also almost in a way confirms with the company that you've done your homework beforehand and that you really are interested in the job, you really are interested in applying, and you are interested in the company. And so on the side here, I just have some quick tips. Be authentic, be yourself, show your enthusiasm for the company and for the position. You want to highlight your strengths, so show them what you're good at, but then you also want to address the areas that you can improve on. Again, continue to show them that you're interested in the company and the position, and then show gratitude, right? So thank your interviewers for their time. Thank the company for giving you an opportunity to speak with them about the position, and just let them know that you appreciate the opportunity. So the other half that I think is important when you are preparing yourself for an interview is making sure that you tell your story, right? Articulating your skills and experience during your interview, and making sure that you let them know that your experiences is what brought you here to this point. So the first thing I would say is keep your target audience in mind. So, using your interview time by prioritizing the information and your experience that will be most relevant to the position and the company would probably be the best approach. So if any of you were interviewing with us here at Ferring Pharmaceuticals and you've had some previous pharmaceutical experience before, that would be information that you may want to highlight over some other experiences that you've had. The second thing would be just to be genuine. A lot of people get nervous during interviews, or they necessarily don't feel as comfortable as they may be speaking to somebody they know versus somebody at a big company that they don't know. And so it's always important to keep in mind to just try to be yourself and be genuine. You want to tell the story of who you are, some of the things that you've done, some of the challenges that you face, and the type of employee that you would be if you get hired. So there's only one of you in the world. Everybody has unique experiences specific to them. And so you want to be genuine and kind of let that come across during the interview. And then the last thing I would say is finish your story by summarizing the resolution, right? So you did this great job of saying, I started at point A and now we're at point B. And so, what is the point of the story you're trying to tell? You want to finish the story by letting them know all of these experiences make me the person you want to hire for the job. So you build a story that points to the same result, you being hired in the job. So highlight the obstacles you face, your unique experiences, the way that you've told a story where they have no option but to say, Jason is the person for this job based on what he just told me. And so again, on the side, I have another handful of tips for you when it comes to telling your story. So make sure you provide the right context. The hard part about telling a story is sometimes we want to cover everything, but again, if you can prioritize your time to the relevant information, that's always going to be the best approach. Um, when you're telling your story, show emotion as you're highlighting any achievements, anything that you're proud of, or any perseverance during periods of hardships. So, if you're really proud of something you've achieved in school, university, or in a previous workplace, and you're really proud of it, you want to show that emotion that you're proud and let that come across during your interview. And the last thing I would say is just make sure you bridge the gap. Make sure you're connecting your skills and experience to the actual position, right? So, for example, if I'm applying for a position as an accountant, I may not want to share too much experiences about, my position as a cashier at the grocery store, right? I want to make sure that the story that I'm telling is connected to the actual position and the company. So hopefully, between preparing yourself and telling your story, I've shared a little bit of information that can be helpful to all you when the time comes. And I know everybody's going to be prepared and they're going to interview really well and they're going to get the job. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it. And now we will pass it off to my colleague, Margarita.
Hello, everybody. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the different types of interviews today, because I'm sure one of them is more familiar to you. The other one is maybe some news. So I'll be telling you a little bit about both. So the first one is the biographical interview. This is when you basically chronologically go through your past experience. This is the obviously to help the interviewer understand what your past behavior was, so that they can a bit predict what is going to be your behavior in the future when you are part of the company. It covers comprehensive and insights about your past experiences, and yeah, it's good for us to get to know what you've done in the past. Some of the questions that in a biographical interview can come up are typically can you talk me through the roles you have held in the past years, or what skills most qualify you for this role, or what is your ultimate career goal? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So this is the most common one. The competency-based interview is maybe one that is not so familiar to you guys. This is a structured series of questions aimed at eliciting a specific behavioral information against some job-related skills that we want to assess. So for instance, if you want to assess if you have leadership skills, we will aim questions, competency questions related to leadership, or to, for instance, if it was leadership, if you have ever led a team, how many people, and what's your type of leadership, if you are more. Yeah, so these type of questions that aim to go to a specific skill that's relevant for the job. What are the potential strengths and potential limitations for the biographical interview? Well, the strengths is it because people know this interview the best, so they are better prepared for it. And for us interviewers, it provides a comprehensive picture of an individual, and in terms of their work and their personal life. What are the limitations? Candidates who are more skilled on a social level and are familiar with their story can obviously do better. Um, and obviously, if they know their resume, and if they are the ones who know their own story, so they will obviously tell it in a way that's more relevant, and then that can sell themselves. And maybe if, like Jason said, if you are not really looking at the job criteria, you may want you probably will talk about something in your resume that isn't specific to the job. So make sure that when you are also doing a biographical interview that you cover all the way to the things that are relevant. Yeah, and what about competency-based interviews? What are the strengths? Obviously, if you are aiming the questions to the skills that are relevant to the job, we will better as interviewers. We will be better prepared to tell our hiring managers why you are competent to the job and why you can do the job. And obviously, what are the limitations? If you cover too many competencies, the interview can be extremely long. So we tend to talk with our managers to see which one of the competencies are must-have, so that we will not cover a lot of skills or a lot of information that's not relevant. And then I will take over to Daniela, and she will talk a bit about behavioral interviews as well.
Yes. Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Daniela. I'm part of also the Global Talent Acquisition team for Ferring, and I'm based in Portugal. So the idea is to give you, again, as Margarita said, an overview about the behavioral interview and give you also some tips about it. Well, the two types of interviews that Margarita was sharing with us can be combined in one, and this is probably the the type of interview that you will see more, because usually you start the interview by the the interview with the recruiter, by the recruiter introducing you to the company, to the position, asking you about your motivation, and also to give you a little resume or a little context about your previous experience, even if it's just university or volunteering or internships. And then we tend to do some questions more related to the skills that we are looking for. And in the behavioral interviews, what we tend to do is to assess the soft skills of the candidate compared to the type of profile that the hiring team, not just the recruiter, but also the hiring manager and the company structure believes that will fit better the team already existing. So in these cases, what we tend to do is to ask you questions about situations that you have deal with. So we are not asking you how would you act if you need to deal with certain situation. We are asking you how did you actually act when you had to deal with these. So type of questions starting by how did you, or tell me about a time where. It's very common for these type of interviews. And here, the way that we believe you can prepare is that, and just to make sure that you are having comprehensive speech, and we are going to a result, as Jason said, because it's important to wrap up in the end of your explanation. So if we start by a situation, we can explain the context of the situation where we deal with the the specific situation that the recruiter asks you about. Then you can describe your role in this situation. So what were the tasks that you were responsible for? Then you can explain how you addressed the situation and what steps you took to overcome the challenge. And by the end, explain the outcome of the situation. Or again, make a small wrap up of the whole context and give the recruiter the final answer. So what was the outcome of the whole situation? My tips on how to get ready for these type of interviews, and I would say that in the majority of interviews with the majority of recruiters, you will find these type of questions. So you can think about examples that you can use. So previously to the interview, you can think about like the most common ones, problem solving. You can think about a problem where you needed to find a solution, or you were the one responsible to find the solution. Proactiveness, for example, you can think about a situation where you came with an idea that was important for your team or your work. So these type, like also team player, you can find examples of times where you act as a team player or a team leader. So this is the type of examples that you can think about before you join the interview. On the other hand, it's, oi, sorry. I no, it's fine. Okay. Uh, the other thing is that you should be calm. This interview, it's about you. So there are no right or wrong answers. This is you talking about your experience. Of course, that again, you can choose better examples than you have or worse examples than others. But if you follow the first tip, you will think about it previously. So you will have your examples done. You can have a list next to you. Nowadays, we are doing a lot of interviews through Teams, Zoom, so virtually. So you can have a list next to you, if especially during the first times that you are interviewing, just to follow up and see, okay, this example was for this type of question, and this can help you. And of course, organize your ideas before you speak, so you can have a clear speech when the interviewer asks you. Again, as all my colleagues said, it's very common that people get very nervous during the interviews. Just be aware that we are also people. We also do interviews on the other side. We are also candidates sometimes. So we do understand, and it's okay. So you don't need to be too stressed or too worried about things. And last but not least, the close. So confirming your interest and follow up. There are some questions that are relevant, and what we feel is that sometimes candidates, because they are nervous, when we finish the interview and we ask, "Do you have any questions?" They have like they're answering like, "No, no, no, it's fine. Thank you so much." And they leave, and after 1 or 2 hours, or maybe next day, we will receive an email with some questions that the candidate could have asked during the interview. So if you have it in mind, just try to make sure that all your questions were answered during the interview. So what are the next steps? When can you expect the recruiter to share feedback with you? Double check always salary expectations. So if the recruiter is not asking you about, you can ask about salary expectations, benefits that companies can offer you, just to make sure that the company is also aligned with what you are looking for. And also the company culture. This is something that people have been asking more and more. I think especially after COVID, it's a common question during the interviews. But I think it's important because even though, and the candidates may always think that the recruiters idea of company culture may be biased, we are also the first people that usually you met of the company, so we can give you our overview. And I think well, I don't give my bias and feedback, but I think it's important that you have some idea about. And if you have specific questions about culture, company culture, just go ahead and do it. Um, Also, make sure you share your motivation and enthusiasm about the company and the position. This can make the difference between selecting one candidate and the other, especially when it's the first job. Um, as also Jason said, just you can thank the time that the interviewer spent with you, and this is not mandatory just for when you are being interviewed by a recruiter, but also the hiring manager, the technical partners that we will meet. It's always important to show some gratitude, let's say. Make sure you know who is your point of contact for further questions you may have. So it's important that your questions are directed to the person that is your point of contact. Sometimes candidates tend to send an email directly to the person that they've met during the interviews, and you need to be aware that it may be someone that it's not even part of the team. It's just a technical interview, for example. So it's important that you know to whom should you send your emails and your communications. Raise all the concerns you may have. This is also important. Again, expectations aligning, it's very important. And be honest about your availability and salary expectations. It's not it's not very pleasant to set a salary expectations during the first interview, and then when we extend offers, people change their salary expectations, and the same with availability, because all of these are criterias for us to select a candidate, and they may impact the final decision, let's say. So after the interview is done and you make all these questions and you raise all these concerns, what now and what should you do? You can send a thank you note to the interviewers and express your interest and enthusiasm about the opportunity. And just a quick note, as we already mentioned, me and Margarida are based in Portugal. We work mainly with the European market. Sam and Jason also working for Ferring, but in the US, working with the American market. And we realized that this thank you email, may be more cultural in certain areas of the globe. I think it's always nice when you send it, even though if it's not culturally normal or common, it's always nice for recruiters, let's say, to receive a thank you from the candidates and feedback. Um, and then contact your point of contact for the recruitment and ask for feedback and tips for next steps. This one goes more like if I'm finishing an interview with you and I'm telling you like next Wednesday you should have news from my side, and if you don't, just send me a note, send me an email. We deal with a lot of recruitment sometimes at the same time in different countries, so sometimes things may get not lost. We did not forget about you, but sometimes it's just too many people. And if you give us a quick reminder, it helps us to give you a good candidate experience and also for us to have a nice and pleasant process. And that's it. So I think we still have time. Yes, we still have around 10 minutes for Q&A. So,
I was going to do a quick overview.
okay.
Sorry. Okay. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who presented today. I hope you all were taking copious notes during this conversation. Today, we went over Ferring as an organization. We talked through the Ferring philosophy. I will say, if there's anything you can take away from our corporate overview, is for you to have your own philosophy going into your career as you move forward. Think through who you want to be when you present yourself at these interviews, and ensure that an interview is not only an opportunity for you to learn about the organization, but for the organization to learn about you. We are interviewing with you as much as you're interviewing with us. Make sure you share your story, bring your authentic self, and research the organization. One of my favorite things to do is to go on a company's website and really take a look at recent news, recent releases. If it's a public company, looking at their financial reviews, because those things can help you prepare for questions that you're asking. For example, you can ask a company, or a recruiter, I noticed that your earnings were higher last year than expected. Can you talk to me through what you guys did in order to get there? Questions like that show that you've done a deep dive into the organizations. Also, knowing the type of interview you're going into. A bio interview, once more, covers you, biography, it's who you are. A competency interview covers the skills in the job. So these are more hard skills. For example, if it's a finance interview, you'll probably talk through questions like, name some of the different corporate reportings or financial reportings. Or if it's a lab interview, you'll talk through some of the work you've done in the lab. And a mixture of the two would be the behavioral based interviews. Tell me about your experiences based off of these competencies. And then lastly, do not forget to close. Don't be afraid to ask for the job. Don't be afraid to tell the recruiter or hiring manager, I feel like I am the right person for this job, and this is why. Make sure you ask for the person's email, especially if it's someone who wasn't on the list of people you were going to be interviewing with. Sometimes things happen and people have to switch through. Ask for someone's email, ask to connect with them on LinkedIn in order to ensure that you can still be in contact with that individual after the interview. And even if you don't get the opportunity, you can use that person or you can work with that person as a mentor or someone in the future, especially if you've built a bond throughout the interview process. This was Acing Your Interviews. And if you have any questions, this is the time now to please ask them either in the chat or raise your hand. It'll be a pleasure for us to answer your questions. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing a message. How would I know if you offer any internship opportunities in Spain? Currently, our internships are not yet posted. We're still in the process of looking within the organization to see who and which groups are interested in interns. I would say give us until December-ish to take a look at the Ferring website to see what internships are posted and available. Does Ferring have any remote roles or internships in Sweden? Okay. I would say for remote roles or internships, once more, if you're looking for remote roles, one, I would ask you the question, when are you graduating, right? If you go on the company website currently and you see and you see a remote role, but you're graduating, let's say in May or June, I would say that's probably not the best opportunity for you because if we post a role now, we're really looking to hire in the next few months. So I would say start looking about 2 to 3 months prior to your graduation in order to see if you are eligible for a role. Yes, and as Jason said, you can always visit our Ferring interview page. What will be the decisive factor in your job interview? Does anyone want to take this question as a decisive factor? Daniela, do you want to take it for you? And Jean will reach out. We'll reach out after Daniela is done answering this question.
Okay. I'm sorry because I lost everybody now. I just can see this Q&A and I cannot see anything else. I would say, as I said, depending here on the amount of seniority that we are looking for this position, but honestly, of course, the technical fit and the soft skills fit with the position and with the hiring manager, they are always important. But the pre-work that this person prepares before they join the interview, showing that they care about the company, that they are enthusiastic about the position, it's a very important aspect for me. So the enthusiasm and the preparation, not just showing that, oh my God, I'm very excited to work for Ferring, but actually show with actions that you are very interested in working, well, in this case for Ferring, yeah.
Thank you so much. Gina Dino, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for your presentation. It was really interesting, and thank you for the tips relating to preparing interviews. I have three questions.
Of course.
I'm currently starting an international master with Rome Business School, but doing it online. Now I couldn't see if you're present in Africa when you were presenting the first part. That's my first question. My second question is, do you provide personal feedback to candidates who reach the interview level, as why they were not hired, why you choose another candidate, how they could better perform next time they have an interview relating to the same role? And my last question is, it's something I always wanted to ask to human resources.
What did you say?
Why asking salary expectations when you already have a budget for the position? Thank you.
Great question. We sincerely appreciate that. So, as you can see, we do have a global presence in Africa. These locations, you'll see where the global presence is. I know for sure that we do have a Ferring South Africa as well. So I would just say take a look on the website. You can always go to the website and filter by locations to see what roles are currently open. Probably the reason why you're not seeing a lot of open roles in those locations is most likely because those roles were just not open at that time. Giving feedback, I feel like, as for me as a person, and this is my personal philosophy, as I mentioned before, especially for early talent, I really love to give feedback to candidates because it means that we've gone above and beyond and said, although this isn't the opportunities for you, this is what you can do in order to really elevate yourself for next time. It could have been your example. It could have been, the person showed up late and unprepared for the interview. I would rather give you that feedback so for your next opportunity, you're prepared and you don't go in and make the same mistake. Sometimes the feedback can be, hey, you did a fantastic job. We just had someone else with a little bit more experience or someone else who took, one or two more classes within this area or someone who was just a little bit more enthusiastic about the role. So know that feedback isn't always negative. And then the third question on salary expectations. Yes, there's a budget for the role. And yes, in most countries, you will see the budget or the pay range on the opportunity posted in that job post. The question is why we ask that question is because we want to know, okay, let's say the job, and this, I'm going to make up a number. Let's say the job is paying $10 an hour and your expectations are $15 an hour. So we would go back to you just in case you didn't see that posting and say, hey, the job is paying $10 an hour. We understand that your expectation is $15 an hour. Are you still interested in the role? As opposed to you going through the entire interview process, we get to offer stage and now you want $15 an hour when the job said $10 an hour. And these are just numbers I'm pulling out because 10 and 15 are round numbers. I could have said 10, 100,000 or 150,000. It should not matter. And then I am seeing some additional questions in the chat. Will you care more about current capacity or capability? And then would you recommend asking about company culture in the interview stage to have managers or recruiters' perspective, or is that question? Ooh, okay. Two very great questions. I think it depends on the role, right? Capacity or capability. For example, if your opportunity is, let's say, in the lab or something that is very technical, obviously we're going to focus more on those competencies questions, because let's say I was a psychology major, applying to a lab position. Obviously, we would want to know what classes, what skills do you have that qualify you for this role? And then when it comes to capacity, those I would say would be more of, non-technical departments. For example, HR will usually tend to have people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and I feel like it's a field where you get people with different skill sets, and each of those people can be highly successful in those roles. So I would really say that question depends on, who you are and what the role specifically is. Company culture is very important, because it could be the best job in the world. If the company does not have the right culture, you will go into that job hating it every single day, right? So it's very important to understand what the company culture is, what they value. A great question, I would say, for an entry level opportunity is, how do you deal with mistakes? How does your company encourage their employees to succeed? How does your company develop an individual? These questions really take a look deep into the company culture to see if they are a growth mindset culture, which means learning from your mistake and moving forward, or if they're a closed mindset where you're not allowed to make mistakes. And as an entry level person, or as someone who is early on in your career, of course you're going to make mistakes. I'm 10 years in and I still make mistakes, right? So it's important to see how your company, your boss, your team reacts to those mistakes. Okay, what is the best response if you ask for salary expectations, and what do you say? One, I would do my research on the organization to see what the salary range is. I would also take a look at the job posting. As I mentioned, in most countries and most states in the US, um, companies are obligated to list the salary expectations. So list something within that salary band, and you should be fine. And also, if you don't know, you can always ask the recruiter, I would love to know what the salary range is for this role, which will better help me know my salary expectations. Okay. Thank you so much for everyone's time, and we sincerely appreciate it today. Please feel free to reach out to myself, Daniela, Margarita, or Jason on LinkedIn. It would be an absolute pleasure to connect with all of you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Samelian, Jason, Margarita, and Daniela. Thank you very much for providing such a great insights and tips and the tricks regarding the interview process with our talent community. And thank you everyone for joining this live presentation as well. And upcoming next, we will have the last presentation of the day from Alpha site at 3 p.m. CEST. I will share the Zoom link in here in the chat with you, and I hope to see you there soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.